"Daddy, please don't leave me. Not today. Not like this." Those were the last words Maya Richardson sobbed into her father's chest as he took his final breath in that cold hospital room. But she couldn't believe her eyes when barely 24 hours after her dad's death, 24 hours after she'd buried the only person who'd ever truly loved her, her husband Marcus was standing at a courthouse signing a marriage license to marry his mistress Vanessa, the woman who'd whispered, "Finally," when Maya's father's heart monitor flatlined. Maya stood there, 6 months pregnant with a baby that would never meet its grandfather, clutching her father's worn jacket that still smelled like him, watching through tears as her husband married his mistress, while her dad's grave dirt was still fresh under her fingernails from placing roses on his casket that very morning. But what shattered Maya's heart into pieces so small she could barely breathe wasn't just watching her husband marry his mistress 24 hours after her dad's death. It was the envelope trembling in her hands. The envelope her dying father had pressed into her palm with his last ounce of strength, whispering, "Baby girl, when I'm gone, open this and remember, you are never alone. You are never poor. You are never powerless. I made sure of that." What Marcus didn't know as he kissed his mistress on the lips that should have comforted his grieving pregnant wife. What Vanessa didn't know as she smiled in triumph over the broken woman still wearing funeral black was that Maya's dad, the humble janitor who'd mopped floors at an elementary school for 35 years, who'd worked Christmas shifts so Maya could have presents, who'd eaten ramen for dinner so she could have dance lessons, wasn't just a janitor. He was a secret trillionaire, worth $5.2 billion, who'd sacrificed everything to teach his daughter that character matters more than cash, that love is worth more than luxury, that a good heart is the only treasure that truly counts. And in exactly 2 hours and 47 minutes, when Maya's hands finally stopped shaking enough to open that will and inherited $5 billion, his mistress, Vanessa, would let out a scream so raw, so full of horror and realization that it would echo in that parking garage like a wounded animal. "Oh my God, Marcus, you left a billionaire. You divorced a billionaire for me. What have we done?" But here's the part that'll break your heart and put it back together again. 3 weeks before he died, Maya's dad called his attorney from his hospital bed, his voice weak but his mind sharp, and said, "Harold, I need you to listen carefully. My son-in-law is going to leave my daughter. I can see it in his eyes. He looks at her like she's a burden now that she's pregnant and I'm dying. So I need you to make sure that when he walks away, when he thinks he's escaping poverty for something better, he can never, ever touch what I'm leaving her. Put it in an irrevocable trust. Make it bulletproof. Because when my baby girl discovers who she really is, I want her to know her daddy protected her even from the grave. Listen to me. If you have ever felt abandoned, betrayed, or underestimated, you need to hit that subscribe button right now. Because Maya's story is about to show you that sometimes the people who leave you do you the biggest favor of your life. Smash that like button if you believe in karma, if you believe good people deserve justice, if you believe that love, real love, is the only thing that lasts forever. And comment below telling me, have you ever lost someone who loved you more than life itself? Tell me about them. Honor them, because this story is for everyone who's ever been protected by someone who saw their worth when nobody else did. But to understand how we got here, to understand why Maya's father knew exactly what Marcus would do, we need to go back 24 hours earlier, to the moment everything fell apart and came together at the same time. The hospital room smelled like disinfectant and death. Maya had been sitting in that same plastic chair for 16 hours straight, her hand wrapped around her father's, watching the monitors measure out his last moments in beeps and numbers that kept getting slower, quieter, weaker. James Richardson, or as the world knew him, just another invisible janitor in a sea of working people, lay beneath white sheets that made his dark skin look gray, made him look smaller than he'd ever been in Maya's eyes. He'd always been larger than life to her, the man who taught her to ride a bike on Saturday mornings before his shift started, the man who showed up to every parent-teacher conference in his work uniform, smelling like pine cleaner and effort, sitting in those tiny chairs with such pride it didn't matter what he wore or how tired he looked. The man who told her every single night before bed, "You are brilliant, you are worthy, you are loved beyond measure." And now he was leaving her. The cancer had come fast and vicious, 3 months from diagnosis to this moment, pancreatic, stage 4 by the time they caught it. The doctors had said maybe 6 months with treatment. He'd made it barely 12 weeks. Maya's phone buzzed in her lap. She glanced at the screen through tears. Her husband, Marcus. The text read, "Still at the hospital? My presentation got moved to tomorrow morning. Gonna stay at Dave's tonight to prep. Don't wait up." She stared at the words, something cold settling in her chest. Her father was dying. Right now. This moment. And Marcus was worried about a sales presentation. She didn't respond. She turned the phone face down and squeezed her father's hand tighter. His eyes fluttered open, still sharp, still her daddy's eyes, even as everything else was shutting down. "Maya," he whispered, his voice like paper tearing. "My beautiful girl. I'm here, Daddy. I'm right here. Need to tell you something." He struggled to breathe, the ventilator hissing beside him. "Important. Listen carefully. Save your strength. We can talk when you're better." "No, baby." His grip tightened with surprising force. "No more pretending. This is it, and you need to know everything." Maya's tears fell faster. "Daddy, please." "In my apartment," he continued, each word an effort. "Bedroom closet, old Nike shoebox, false bottom. There's a key. A key. Safety deposit box, First National Bank, box 1247. He coughed, his whole body shaking. "Everything you need is there. Everything I should have told you years ago." "I don't understand." "You will." His eyes found hers, and in them she saw something she'd never seen before. Fear, not of dying, but of leaving her unprepared. "Promise me. Promise you'll go. Promise you won't tell anyone until you understand." "I promise." "Not Marcus." His voice gained sudden strength. "Especially not Marcus." Maya's breath caught. "What? Why?" "Because I see him, baby. I see how he looks at you now that you're pregnant, now that I'm sick, like you're a burden instead of a blessing." His breathing was getting shallower. "I added something to my will 3 weeks ago. Protection. For you. For my grandbaby." "Daddy, what are you talking about?" But the machines were changing their rhythm. The beeps were spreading further apart. A nurse rushed in, checked the monitors, and her face told Maya everything. "Mr. Richardson," the nurse said gently, "do you want us to—" "No," James whispered. "No machines. Just my daughter." The nurse nodded and quietly left, closing the door behind her. James looked at Maya, and despite everything, he smiled. "You know what the best day of my life was?" Maya shook her head, unable to speak past the sob in her throat. "The day your mama put you in my arms. You were so tiny, so perfect, and I looked at you and I thought, this is it. This is what I was born for. Not money, not power, not all the things my family tried to make me want. Just you. Just loving you." "Mama?" Maya's voice broke. Her mother had died giving birth to her. She'd never known her. She was a teacher, beautiful, kind, everything pure in this world. His eyes were distant now, seeing something Maya couldn't. "My family hated her, said she wasn't good enough, wasn't our class. They gave me a choice, her or the inheritance." "What inheritance?" "I chose her, baby. Every time I chose love. And when she died bringing you into this world, I chose you. I walked away from billions to raise you right, to teach you what actually matters." Maya's head was spinning. "Billions? Daddy, what?" "My real name is James Hartwell III. Each word was getting harder for him. "Hartwell Industrial Holdings, my grandfather's empire. I was supposed to take over, supposed to marry some debutante my mother picked out. But I met your mama at a charity event, and I knew she was my real life. So I left. Changed my name, got a job mopping floors, and I never regretted it, not once." "You've been rich this whole time?" Maya couldn't process it. Her father, who'd worked double shifts, who'd driven a car held together with duct tape, who'd made her peanut butter sandwiches for lunch every day because that's what they could afford. "Not rich, baby, wealthy. There's a difference. Rich is what you have. Wealthy is what you are." He smiled through the pain. "And you, my darling girl, are the wealthiest person I know. You have character, integrity, a heart so big it scares me sometimes. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I wanted you to grow up normal, to marry someone who loved you, not your bank account, to know your own strength." His breathing was labored now. "But I never stopped managing it, the money, growing it, protecting it, for you." The monitors were screaming now. Maya wanted to call the nurses, but she couldn't let go of his hand. "The envelope," James gasped. "In the deposit box, it explains everything, the trusts, the protections, and baby—" He pulled her close with his last bit of strength. "Trust the plan. I know it's going to hurt, I know what's coming, but trust the plan." "What's coming?" "Daddy, what do you mean?" But his eyes were closing. "You are never alone. You are never poor. You are never powerless. I made sure of that." "Daddy, no." "I love you, Maya, more than all the money in the world. You are my greatest treasure." And then he was gone. Just like that. The machines flatlined. The sound echoed in Maya's ears like the end of everything. She collapsed onto his chest, sobbing so hard she couldn't breathe, clutching his worn workshirt, breathing in the smell of him one last time. Irish spring soap and coffee and love. She didn't hear the door open, didn't hear the nurses come in, didn't hear them gently tell her it was time to let go. All she heard was the silence where her father's voice used to be, and in her pocket, her phone buzzed again. Marcus, "Hey babe, Dave's girlfriend is here too. We're all gonna grab drinks, probably be a late night. You good?" Maya stared at the text through tears, her father's words echoing, "I see how he looks at you, like you're a burden instead of a blessing." She finally saw it too. The rain hammered down on Evergreen Cemetery like the sky itself was grieving. Maya stood at the edge of her father's grave, her black dress soaked through, her hand resting on her swollen belly as the preacher's words blurred into meaningless sound. She couldn't hear him over the roar in her head, the desperate voice screaming that this couldn't be real, that any second now her daddy would walk up behind her and say, "Just kiddin', baby girl, I'm not going anywhere." But the mahogany casket being lowered into the ground said different. The roses she'd placed on top, his favorite yellow ones, were already wilting in the rain, petals washing away into the mud. There were maybe 30 people there, former co-workers from the elementary school, a few neighbors, some distant cousins who'd shown up out of obligation, people Maya barely recognized. Her father had lived quietly, loved deeply, and died leaving a hole in the world that felt too big for Maya to survive. Marcus stood beside her, but he might as well have been on another planet. He held an umbrella over his own head, not hers. He checked his phone every few minutes, his jaw tight with impatience. When the preacher said, "Ashes to ashes, dust to dust," Marcus sighed loud enough for Maya to hear it. She looked at him then, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. This man who'd promised to love her in sickness and health, for better or worse, couldn't even pretend to care that she'd just lost everything. After the service, as people filed past offering condolences Maya would never remember, Marcus leaned close and whispered, "I need to head out. Got a thing with some clients." Maya turned to him slowly. "A thing?" "Marcus, we just buried my father." "I know, babe, and I'm sorry, but this deal has been in the works for months. I can't just—" "Your wife just buried her father." Her voice was flat, dead. "And you have a thing." He had the decency to look uncomfortable. "Look, you've got people here. You'll be fine. I'll see you at home later." He kissed her forehead, quick, perfunctory, the way you'd pat a dog, and walked away. Through the rain, toward the parking lot, pulling out his phone before he'd even made it to his car, Maya watched him go, something breaking inside her that she didn't have a name for yet. An elderly woman approached, Mrs. Chen, who'd worked the front desk at her father's school. She pulled Maya into a fierce hug that smelled like lavender and mothballs. "Your daddy was the best man I ever knew," she whispered. "He talked about you every single day. You were his whole world." Maya couldn't speak. She just nodded, tears mixing with rain on her face. "He told me something a few weeks ago," Mrs. Chen continued. "He said, 'Helen, my baby girl is stronger than she knows, and soon she's going to need every bit of that strength.' I didn't understand what he meant then. But Maya, honey, whatever you're facing, whatever's coming, you've got your daddy's blood in you. That means you've got steel in your spine." The old woman squeezed her hand once and walked away, leaving Maya standing alone in the rain, those words echoing. Whatever's coming. Her father had known. Somehow, he'd known. That night, Maya sat alone in her father's tiny apartment, surrounded by the life he'd built. The threadbare couch he'd owned for 20 years. The TV that only got 3 channels. The kitchen table where he'd helped her with homework every night, where they'd eaten countless dinners together, where he'd taught her that the best conversations happen over simple food and genuine love. She should have been packing his things, sorting through belongings, doing all the practical tasks that come after death. But she couldn't move. She just sat there, wearing his old jacket, breathing in the fading smell of him, trying to understand what he'd meant about the safety deposit box, about protection, about being a Hartwell. Her phone rang. Marcus. "Hey," he said, background noise loud behind him, music, laughter. "Just checking in. You okay?" "Where are you?" "Just grabbed dinner with the team. You know how it is. Had to decompress after the funeral. Heavy day." Heavy day, like he'd been the one lowering his father into the ground. "When are you coming home?" Probably late. We might hit up a bar after this. You should get some rest. You look exhausted." I look exhausted. Her voice cracked. Marcus, I buried my father today. I know, babe, that's why I'm saying you should rest. He sounded irritated now, like she was being unreasonable. Look, I gotta go. Order some food, take a bath. I'll see you tomorrow. He hung up before she could respond. Maya sat there staring at her phone, and that's when she saw it. A notification at the top of the screen. Marcus's Instagram had been tagged in a photo. Her hands shook as she opened it. There he was, at some trendy restaurant she'd never heard of, sitting in a booth, and next to him, pressed close, laughing at something he'd said, was a woman Maya had never seen before. Beautiful, polished, wearing a red dress that probably cost more than Maya's monthly rent. The caption read, "Celebrating new beginnings with my favorite people, Olor Marcus Rich, Vanessa Chen, Senior Marketing Director at Marcus's company." Maya had heard the name before. Marcus mentioned her sometimes, his boss, the woman he was always having meetings with. Maya clicked on Vanessa's profile. It was public, full of photos of expensive restaurants, luxury vacations, designer clothes, success personified. And there, 3 photos down, was another one. Marcus and Vanessa, his arm around her waist, her hand on his chest, both of them smiling like they had won the lottery, posted 6 weeks ago, while Maya's father was dying, while Maya was spending every night at the hospital, while her world was ending. The caption, "When you know, you know." Maya's vision blurred. She scrolled further, more photos. Marcus and Vanessa at a concert, at a beach, at what looked like a hotel room, though that one was more carefully cropped. The affair had been going on for months, maybe longer, while Maya was pregnant with his child, while her father was dying. While she was drowning in grief and fear and loneliness, Marcus had been building a whole other life with someone else. She ran to the bathroom and vomited, her body rejecting the reality like poison. When she finally stopped shaking, she looked at herself in the mirror. Her eyes were swollen from crying. Her face was pale, her pregnant belly pushed against her father's oversized jacket. She looked exactly like what she was, a broken woman who'd lost everything. And in that moment, staring at her own devastated reflection, Maya made a decision. Tomorrow, she would go to the bank. She would open that safety deposit box. She would find out what her father meant about being a Hartwell, about protection, about never being powerless, because right now, she felt like the most powerless person on earth. Her phone buzzed, a text from Marcus. "BTW, we need to talk when I get home. Something important." Those words, the ones that never mean anything good. Maya knew what was coming. She could feel it in her bones the way you feel a storm rolling in. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know, was that in exactly 18 hours her entire world would flip upside down in ways she couldn't imagine. The next morning came too fast and too slow at the same time. Maya hadn't slept. She'd spent the night on her father's couch, clutching his jacket, staring at the ceiling, waiting for Marcus to come home. He never did. At 6 a.m., her phone buzzed. A text, "Crashed at Dave's, coming by at 9. We need to talk. Important." Maya's hands went to her belly. Her baby, her little girl, the doctor had told her just last week, kicked hard like she could feel her mother's fear. "It's okay, sweet girl," Maya whispered. "We're going to be okay. Your grandpa promised. We just have to trust the plan." But she had no idea what the plan was. At 8:30 a.m., Maya forced herself to shower, to put on clean clothes, to look like a person instead of a ghost. She chose a simple black dress, the same one she'd worn to the funeral yesterday, because everything else felt too cheerful, too alive for how she felt inside. She made coffee she wouldn't drink, sat at the kitchen table, waited. Marcus arrived at 9:15, which meant he'd made her wait on purpose. Power play. She recognized it now, wondered how many other small cruelties she'd missed while loving him. He looked good, rested, like he hadn't just attended his father-in-law's funeral yesterday. He was wearing cologne, expensive stuff he'd never worn around her. For a flash, Maya wondered if he'd been with Vanessa all night. "Hey," he said, not quite meeting her eyes. "How you feeling?" "How do you think I'm feeling, Marcus? I buried my father yesterday." "Right, yeah." He sat down across from her, and she saw it then, the folder in his hand. Manila. Official looking. The kind lawyers use. Her heart started hammering. "Look, there's no easy way to say this." He slid the folder across the table. "I want a divorce." The words hit her like a physical blow. Even though she'd known, even though she'd seen it coming, hearing them out loud made them real in a way that stole her breath. "What?" "I'm not happy, Maya. I haven't been for a long time." His voice was rehearsed, like he'd practiced this speech. "We've grown apart. You've been so focused on your dad's illness, and I need something different. My dad just died yesterday." Her voice didn't sound like her own. "Yesterday, Marcus, and you're asking me for a divorce today? The timing isn't ideal." "Isn't ideal," she laughed, a broken sound. "I'm 6 months pregnant with your baby. My father, the only family I had left, just died. And the timing isn't ideal. I know it's hard, but prolonging this doesn't help anyone." He was using his sales voice now, the one he used to close deals. "I've already talked to a lawyer. It can be simple, clean. You keep the apartment. I'll pay child support. We can both move on with our lives." "Move on?" Maya's hands were shaking. "To what? To who?" She pulled out her phone, opened Instagram, shoved it across the table. "To her?" Marcus's face went carefully blank. "Maya? How long?" Her voice rose. "How long have you been sleeping with your boss while I was watching my father die? It's not like that." "Then what is it like?" She was shouting now, something she never did. "Tell me, Marcus, what is it like to cheat on your pregnant wife while her father is dying of cancer? What is it like to attend his funeral and then go out celebrating with your mistress? What is it like? Don't make this ugly." His jaw was tight. "I didn't plan for this to happen. Vanessa and I we connect. On a level you and I never did. She's successful, ambitious, going places. She understands the life I want." Every word was a knife. "And what am I?" Maya's voice broke. "What was I to you? You were my wife. Past tense. You're a good person, Maya. You really are. But you were never going to be enough. Not for the life I want to build." The cruelty of it took her breath away. "I'm pregnant with your child. I know. And I'll support the baby financially. I'm not a monster. But I can't stay in a marriage that makes me miserable just because of biology." He stood up, buttoned his jacket. "Sign the papers. My lawyer will be in touch about the details. I'll come by this weekend to get my stuff." "Marcus, please." She hated the begging in her voice, hated that even now, even after everything, some part of her wanted him to stay. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and what she saw in his eyes was worse than anger. It was pity. "You'll be okay, Maya. You're strong. You'll figure it out." And then he left. Just walked out. Left her sitting there, 6 months pregnant, freshly orphaned, with divorce papers on the table and a future that looked like a black hole. Maya sat in the silence, her father's words echoing. "I see it in his eyes. He looks at you like you're a burden." Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Hi Maya, this is Vanessa. I know this must be hard for you, but Marcus and I are in love. We'd appreciate your discretion and cooperation during this transition. We'd like to move forward with our lives as quickly as possible. Thank you for understanding." The audacity, the sheer, breathtaking audacity. Something shifted in Maya then, something cold and clear and sharp. She picked up her keys, grabbed her father's jacket, and drove to First National Bank. It was time to find out what her father had meant about never being powerless. The bank was old, imposing, all marble floors and cathedral ceilings. Maya walked up to the information desk, her pregnant belly leading the way, and said, "I need to access safety deposit box 1247. The woman's fingers flew over her keyboard. Then she paused, looked up at Maya with new eyes. "One moment, please. I need to get the manager." A man in an expensive suit appeared within minutes. "Miss Richardson, I'm Gerald Whitmore, branch manager. Please, follow me." He led her to a private room, used 2 keys to open the box, and then quietly excused himself. Inside was a single large envelope. Maya's hands shook as she opened it. The first thing she saw was a letter in her father's handwriting. But beneath it were documents, so many documents, stock certificates, property deeds, bank statements with numbers that didn't make sense. She read the letter first. "My dearest Maya, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And you're probably confused, maybe scared, definitely grieving. I'm so sorry I'm not there to explain this in person, to hold you while you process it, to see your face when you realize who you really are. But baby girl, it's time you knew the truth about the Hartwell family, about me, about everything I've been protecting you from and protecting for you all these years." Maya read the whole thing, tears streaming down her face, her mind struggling to process what her father was telling her. He was James Hartwell III, heir to a $3 billion empire. He'd walked away at 23 to marry her mother, the woman his family said wasn't good enough. He'd changed his name, taken a janitor job, built a real life based on love instead of money. But he'd never given up the inheritance. He'd just hidden it. Managed it quietly through lawyers, let it grow, protected it, for her. And 3 weeks before he died, knowing what Marcus would do, he'd restructured everything. Put it all in an irrevocable trust that Marcus could never touch, not even if they were still married. The total estate value, current assessment, 5.2 billion. Maya read that number 5 times, billion, with a B. Her father, her daddy who'd eaten ramen for dinner so she could have dance lessons, had been worth $5 billion, and he'd left every penny of it to her. There was a final paragraph in the letter that made her sob out loud. I know what Marcus is going to do, baby girl. I've seen it in his eyes for months now. He's going to leave you. He's going to hurt you in ways that will make you question everything. But I need you to understand something. Him leaving is the greatest gift he could give you. Because now you'll know that when he chose to go, he had no idea what he was walking away from. He left you because he thought you were poor, because he thought you were weak, because he thought he could do better. And Maya, my darling daughter, I need you to let him go. Let him marry his mistress. Let him build his little life. And when you're ready, when you've healed, you show him and her and the whole world exactly who Maya Richardson Hartwell really is, not with cruelty, not with revenge, but by building a life so beautiful, so meaningful, so powerful that they spend the rest of their days choking on regret. That's the Hartwell way. We don't destroy our enemies. We simply become so magnificent they destroy themselves. Trust the plan, baby girl. I love you more than all the billions in the world. Daddy. Maya sat in that room for 2 hours, reading and rereading every document, every letter, every piece of her father's secret life. Then she pulled out her phone and called the law firm whose card was attached to the documents, Hartwell and Associates. A man answered immediately. Miss Richardson, we've been expecting your call. I'm Harold Ashford, your father's attorney, and your cousin, actually. Your father was my Uncle James. I'd very much like to meet with you to explain everything and begin the transition of assets. Would tomorrow work? Tomorrow? Maya's voice was hollow. My husband just asked me for a divorce this morning. I know. Harold's voice was gentle. Your father predicted that would happen. He had me prepare something special for that exact scenario. Maya, I'm so sorry for your loss. Your Uncle James was the best man I ever knew. But I promise you, he's still protecting you. Everything is in place. Everything is going to be okay. Maya ended the call and sat in the silence, her hand on her belly, her mind reeling. Marcus had asked for a divorce because he thought she had nothing. Because he thought Vanessa, with her 6-figure salary and her designer clothes, was a better bet. He had no idea he'd just walked away from $5 billion. And tomorrow, Maya was going to start learning exactly what that meant. But first, she had to sign those divorce papers. She had to let him go. Not because she was weak, but because her father had taught her something Marcus would never understand. True power doesn't announce itself. It waits, it watches, it moves when the time is right. Maya drove home, signed every page Marcus had left her, and placed them in an envelope addressed to his lawyer. Then she opened her laptop and bought a ticket to New York for the next morning. Harold Ashford had offered to send a private jet, but Maya had declined. She wasn't ready for that world yet. She needed one more day of being regular Maya, one more day before everything changed. Her phone buzzed, a text from Marcus. Did you sign? She typed back, yes, you're free. His response came immediately. Thank you for being reasonable about this. For what it's worth, I hope you find happiness. Maya stared at those words, the casual cruelty of them, the assumption that he was doing her a favor, that she should be grateful. She deleted the message without responding. Then she opened Instagram and looked at Vanessa's profile one more time. The latest post showed her and Marcus at what looked like a jewelry store. The caption, when you know, you know. Engaged, new beginnings. They'd gotten engaged, the same day he'd asked for a divorce, probably the same day Maya had buried her father. Maya felt something shift inside her, not anger, not even hurt anymore, something colder, something patient, something her father had spent her whole life teaching her even though she hadn't known what the lessons were for, dignity in the face of cruelty. Grace under pressure, the long game. She commented on the post, congratulations, I wish you both all the happiness you deserve. Every word meant exactly what it said. Within an hour, the post had exploded. People who knew Maya, who knew she'd just lost her father and her husband in the same week, were commenting in outrage. Vanessa's comment section became a war zone. Maya turned off her phone and went to bed in her father's apartment, wrapped in his jacket, her hand on her belly. "Your grandpa was a smart man," she whispered to her baby. "He knew exactly what he was doing. We just have to trust the plan." Outside, thunder rumbled. A storm was coming, but Maya Richardson Hartwell was ready for it. The law offices of Hartwell & Associates occupied the entire 47th floor of the Sterling Tower in Manhattan, and when Maya stepped out of the elevator the next morning, everything was glass and chrome and the kind of quiet that money buys. The receptionist looked up and her expression shifted immediately. "Miss Hartwell?" "Richardson," Maya corrected automatically. She was led down a hallway lined with portraits of stern-looking men in suits, Hartwells, her ancestors, and then she saw it at the end of the hall, a portrait of a young man with kind eyes and a smile that wanted to break free. Her father. Young, wealthy, before he'd walked away from all of this. A distinguished man in his 60s stepped out, his face breaking into a warm smile. "Maya, I'm Harold Ashford, your Uncle Harry. Your father was my uncle." He led her into a conference room where two other people waited, a sharp-eyed woman and a younger man with a laptop. "This is Patricia Whitmore, your financial advisor, and David Chen, your accountant. They've been managing your father's holdings for 15 years. Now they work for you." Over the next hours, they walked Maya through everything. She owned controlling shares in 17 major corporations, commercial real estate in 12 states, a stock portfolio worth $1.8 billion, an art collection valued at $400 million, liquid assets totaling $600 million. "Your father restructured everything 3 weeks before he died," Harold said quietly, "the day after Marcus visited him in the hospital." Maya's breath caught. "Marcus visited him? He told me he couldn't get away from work." Harold's expression darkened. He spent 15 minutes complaining about hospital bills, how the pregnancy was bad timing, how he was under pressure at work. He asked if your father had life insurance to offset the burden. Your father heard every word. The next day, he called me and made absolutely certain Marcus could never touch a penny of it. Maya felt tears sliding down her face. He knew. Harold slid a final letter across the table. "Marcus didn't leave because you weren't enough. He left because he wasn't enough. Now rise, not for revenge, but because you are a Hartwell. Build something beautiful, help people, and when Marcus sees what you've become, smile. Because their regret is not your burden. Live well. That's the best revenge of all." Maya wiped her eyes. "I want to help women in crisis, single mothers, women who feel powerless and alone. I want to start immediately." "Your father already established a foundation with a $500 million endowment," Patricia said gently. "It's ready whenever you are." "Then I'm ready. But first, I want to host a dinner for potential partners and board members." Maya pulled up Vanessa's LinkedIn. She's a senior marketing director, successful, well-connected, exactly the kind of person a new foundation would want to meet, wouldn't she? Harold's smile turned knowing. "Along with her new husband, of course." 3 weeks later, elegant invitations arrived at 50 carefully selected addresses. The Richardson Hartwell Foundation cordially invites you to an intimate dinner reception. Friday, October 15th, 7 p.m., the Metropolitan Club. Vanessa showed it to Marcus immediately, her eyes bright. "This could be huge for my career. If I could get on their board." She RSVP'd yes within the hour. The Metropolitan Club was old-money elegance, soaring ceilings, crystal chandeliers, power whispered instead of shouted. Maya arrived early in an emerald green maternity gown, diamond earrings that had belonged to her Hartwell grandmother sparkling at her ears. She was 7 months pregnant now, and she'd never felt more powerful. At 7:15, Marcus and Vanessa walked in. Maya saw them before they saw her, Marcus uncomfortable among genuine wealth, Vanessa confident in her red designer dress scanning the room for important people to impress. Harold stepped to the front. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce our founder and director, Miss Maya Richardson Hartwell." Maya stepped forward. Every eye in the room turned to her, including Marcus's, including Vanessa's. She watched the recognition hit them, watched Marcus's face drain of color, watched Vanessa's smile freeze and crack. "Thank you all for coming," Maya said, her voice steady. 3 months ago, I lost my father, a janitor at an elementary school who taught me that true wealth isn't measured in bank accounts, but in lives you touch and integrity you carry. What I didn't know was that my father, James Hartwell III, had walked away from his family's fortune 35 years ago to marry the woman he loved. He chose love over money. He raised me to value the same things. Marcus gripped the back of a chair, his knuckles white. When he passed, he left me his entire estate, valued at approximately $5.2 billion, but more than that, he left me a mission to help women who feel powerless and abandoned, because 3 months ago, I was one of those women. Maya's eyes found Marcus directly. I was 6 months pregnant, grieving my father's death, when my husband asked me for a divorce. He told me I would never be enough, that he'd found someone better, someone successful, ambitious, going places. Vanessa was shaking, her hand over her mouth. He divorced me, thinking I had nothing, and I let him go because my father taught me, you can't lose what's truly yours, and you can't keep what was never meant to stay. This foundation is for every woman who's been underestimated, told she's not enough, because sometimes the people who leave you do you the greatest favor of your life. She raised her glass. To new beginnings, to understanding your worth. The room erupted in applause. People rushed to congratulate her, and in the back, Marcus and Vanessa stood frozen, watching the woman they'd pitied become the center of a world they'd never touch. Marcus grabbed Vanessa's arm and pulled her toward the exit. They made it to the parking garage before Vanessa's composure shattered. The scream echoed off concrete walls, raw and full of horror. "Oh my God, Marcus, you left a billionaire. You divorced a billionaire for me? What have we done?" "I didn't know. You didn't know." Vanessa was hysterical. "Her father was a janitor. You said she was poor. You said we were trading up." "She was poor. How was I supposed to know? You left her while she was pregnant. You married me 24 hours after her father died, and she's worth $5 billion. What you lost," Marcus shot back, "you pushed me to leave her. Because you told me she had nothing." Vanessa's voice broke. "I'm the other woman in a story where the wife is one of the richest people in the state. My reputation, my career, everything is destroyed." She looked at her wedding ring and laughed bitterly. "I thought I won, but she let you go. Because you were nothing, and she knew it before we did." Vanessa pulled off her ring and threw it at him. "I can't be married to a man stupid enough to divorce a billionaire. This is over." "Vanessa, wait!" But she was gone, leaving Marcus alone with the echo of her screams and the weight of the biggest mistake of his life. Upstairs, Maya was accepting promises of support, feeling her baby kick strong and healthy. Harold approached with a knowing smile. They left rather quickly. Vanessa was screaming in the parking garage. Maya felt nothing. No satisfaction, no triumph, just calm certainty. "My father once told me the best revenge is building a life so beautiful your enemies destroy themselves watching it. He'd be very proud of you." "I know. I can feel it." 2 months later, Maya gave birth to Naomi James Richardson Hartwell. Marcus was allowed supervised visits because Maya believed her daughter deserved to know her father, even if he'd proven unworthy of being in Maya's life. Vanessa moved to Boston to escape the scandal, declared bankruptcy, took a lower-paying job where no one knew about the parking garage screaming. And Maya built her foundation into something transformative. 200 women helped in the first year, rent paid, hope restored. 5 years later, Naomi started kindergarten at the same school where her grandfather had worked as a janitor. Marcus showed up to drop her off, watching his confident daughter skip into the building. "She's amazing," he said quietly. "Yes," Maya agreed. "She is." He wanted to say he'd changed, that he understood now, that he'd give anything for a second chance. But Maya's eyes were on her daughter, and he realized she wasn't thinking about him at all. She'd won not by destroying him, but by building a life so full, so meaningful, that his presence or absence made no difference. Maya stood in the morning sunlight, her father's words echoing. "You are never alone. You are never poor. You are never powerless." And she knew he'd been right. Not because of the billions, but because he'd raised her to know that true power comes from within. True wealth is measured in love, and the people who leave you are making room for the life you were always meant to live. So if you've ever felt abandoned, betrayed, or told you weren't enough, remember Maya's story. Sometimes the people who walk away are doing you the biggest favor of your life. Now I want to hear from you. Where are you watching this from? Lagos, New York, London, somewhere else? Drop your location in the comments right now. And if this story moved you, if it reminded you that you're stronger than you know, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story like this. Because you are never powerless. You just might not know it yet. Thanks for watching. And remember, the best revenge is living well.